Sifiso Danisa. I am the CEO and co-founder of Limu. Limu is an innovative platform for kids who can engage in African languages. They will be entertained and educated while they are enjoying seeing themselves and seeing stories that they can relate to. I like to read a variety of books, but my favorites are biographies. So I'm going to be talking about 3 books. So the first book is called Hustling, Happiness, and a Blow-Up Doll Named Percy by Dale Heffer. I love this book. It's full of humor. I laughed quite a lot. It's full of humor and also full of life lessons. So I'm just going to pick on 3 of them that impacted me directly, and I enjoyed reading the chapters. So the first chapter, that she opens a book with the first chapter, and she talks about knowing yourself, being yourself, and also knowing your defects. And this calls for a lot of introspection, honest introspection in knowing who you are. And therefore, once you know what your character defects are, you're able then to counter that. So from a startup founder point of view, this is quite important, because when you know who you are, you know what your defects are, and therefore you're able to surround yourself with people who can complement your defects, and also helps you to know how to interact in certain situations. But most importantly, that you're able to show up authentically in the various situations that you find yourselves, or various platforms where you have to speak and present yourself as an entrepreneur. I think for me, it's critical that you show up as who you are and not try to be somebody else. So being independent. So I loved that chapter. And the other chapter that I really enjoyed reading, she calls it Chill Your Tits, which is basically relax. You know, as founders, we carry many hats. You find yourself doing so many different things. And you can become uptight and a bit stressed. And here she emphasizes the importance of learning to relax. And she phrases it as chill your tits. And it's got to be intentional, right? You've got to be able to find time where you can step back and relax and just recharge. And she ends the chapter by saying that if you don't know, or if you don't learn how to relax, you are not happy. You don't become a happy person. So that's a lesson that I've taken in quite seriously, and I do try and practice it, so I don't get overwhelmed and become uptight. The last chapter that I enjoyed was, she called it How Corona Took My Shirt Off. And she talks about her experience of losing millions because of lockdown, and she was quite depressed. But she then says that you can't grieve forever. At some stage, you've got to get out of bed, stop the pity party, and get going. And I think sometimes we tend to hang on to things that should have been and could have been. So this, for me, was a nice reminder that you've got to get on with things. And one of the key lessons that I learned from that chapter is that your work ethic counts for something, and also partnering with the right people, because all this paid dividends to her when the chips were down and she was losing, and she lost a lot of money. She called upon her partnership, and because of her work ethics, people were able to support her during this time. So like I said, the book is loaded with lots of humorous lessons, and one of them, she also talks about the importance of setting goals and having a plan. So I could relate to this fully, because I'm very much a person who likes to notes and make notes and to-do lists and make a plan. So I loved that about being conscious about setting goals and setting a plan, which leads me to my next book, which is called A Woman Makes a Plan. And this book was written by May Mosk. What attracted me to this book was the cover. So it's an elderly lady, she's in her 70s, and I was like, oh, I wonder what she has to say. And the key lesson for me was it's never too late to start again. It's never too late to start a business. Doesn't matter what your age is. She became successful more in her later years of life. So that was an important lesson. And also have the courage to start again from scratch. So she moved in several cities. I think it was 8 cities that she had to start afresh from. Her biography is about how she survived an abusive marriage, raised 3 kids, and how she juggled two professions as a model and as a dietitian. And she highlights the various incidences that impacted her growth. And so as and when she was starting afresh, she said one of the important things was getting yourself out there, right? Networking. And again, I could relate to this. I'm very much a background person. I don't like to be out there. But she says that if you don't put yourself out there, if you don't network and people don't know what you're about, then who's going to know who you are? And also, if you don't ask, you won't know whether it's a yes or a no. So there's no harm in asking. So that was also quite a big lesson for me, which I'm learning to implement now, is to network and share my story and share what it is that I do. She says it's okay to make a plan. Sometimes plans don't go right, which is fine. But the important thing is to make another plan. And I guess hence her title, When a Woman Makes a Plan. The last book is also by a South African. His name is McLean Swanda, and it's called Nuts and Bolts. So he shares his journey as the CEO of the Innovation Hub and his experiences or his views on the entrepreneurship ecosystem in Africa and in South Africa, particularly in South Africa. I enjoyed reading this book. It's very much a reference book, but I really enjoyed it because it gave me context of what is happening in the South African ecosystem and how incubators and accelerators, what role they play in the startups' lives. And he emphasizes that it's not only about getting funding, but also about finding an accelerator or an incubator that will stimulate innovation, commercialize, and help you to scale. It was the first time I'd also learned about science innovation parks and the role they play in transitioning economies from being resource-based to being knowledge-based. So, there was a lot of takeout of this book. It was more of a serious book for me as a startup. And there were lots of learnings as well from other entrepreneurs who were also sharing their journey. What I found that was very important was that we need to be intentional as a country about grooming and supporting entrepreneurs, because this is the future of employment. This is where a lot of employment will come from, and economies are going to thrive because of thriving entrepreneurs. So Africa doesn't need aid, it needs thriving entrepreneurs. So these are my 3 favorite books that I've read lately, and I really like them because they're all written by South Africans, and so it was easy to relate to the context and to relate what they were talking about.